Welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep today.
Yeah, today we're going down a rabbit hole, exploring alternative perspectives on, well, history, mythology, and religion, too, all through the lens of astrotheology.
Ooh, sounds intense.
It is. Our guide, Michael Tsarion,
Oh, Tsarion.
specifically his book Astro-Theology. Fair warning, though, he's not afraid of controversy. Some of his ideas, they might challenge, well, everything you think you know.
I'm intrigued already. What's Tsarion's take on astrology? Is it like reading your horoscope in the daily paper?
Not quite. He's not about what's your sign and all
Yeah.
that. Tsarion's looking at how ancient cultures use the stars.
Okay.
The planets, too, as a symbolic language, a way to understand something deeper about human consciousness.
So it's not about planets controlling our fate. It's about the stars mirroring something inside us.
Exactly. It's like, hold on, it's like a mirror to our inner world.
I like that.
Tsarion calls this the living oracle. And he's pretty skeptical of the
Yeah.
idea that planets, out there directly influence our lives. Interesting. So less about external forces, more about internal reflections.
Yeah. He actually quotes, it was an architect, R.A. Schwaller de Lubitsch,
Okay.
who said that ancient astrologers, they didn't believe planets controlled us at all, not how they saw it.
Wow, that's a pretty bold claim, especially with so many people following horoscopes these days. It's like turning the whole concept of astrology upside down.
He does, and he makes things even more interesting. He brings in Carl Jung.
Oh, Jung, what a mind.
Right, Jung saw the stars as, well, archetypes.
Those universal patterns
Yeah.
of thought and behavior.
Yes. Existing in all of us. He called them dominants of the unconscious.
I remember that term.
Jung believed they shaped our experiences in some pretty profound ways.
Okay, so we've got this tension between astrology as an external force versus an internal reflection. Where do you stand on that?
I'm not sure yet. Could both be true, maybe? In different ways.
That's the question, isn't it? And it's something to think about as we go deeper, because Tsarion doesn't stop in astrology. He goes headfirst into some controversial territory.
I was thinking about that, the origins of Judeo-Christianity, right?
Right. This is where it gets wild. His claim is that Judeo-Christianity, it actually comes from, wait for it, the Egyptian cult of Aten, also called Aton.
Whoa, hold on. So he's connecting ancient Egypt to the Bible.
He is. It's a bold claim.
Okay.
It challenges the traditional story of how these religions came about.
Okay, so how does he back that up? What's the evidence?
Etymology. He draws connections between Aten and the Hebrew words like Adon, Adonai, and even Jehovah.
Interesting. So there's a linguistic link he's pointing out.
Exactly. A link that's, well, often overlooked. He goes even further, saying that the figure of Christ himself was based on the pharaohs who promoted Aten worship in Egypt.
Wait, is he saying that the stories, the figures we think of as Christian, might have roots in a totally different culture, a totally different time?
That's exactly what he's suggesting. He points to Akhenaten specifically, a pharaoh who actually enforced Aten worship as the one true God.
Akhenaten, wasn't he part of that broken king's lineage?
He was.
Didn't his family's rule cause, like, a lot of upheaval in Egypt?
Right. Akhenaten tried to shift Egyptian society towards monotheism, but it wasn't exactly a smooth transition.
Makes sense. Forcing a whole society to change its beliefs.
There's historical evidence, the Restoration Stela Tutankhamun, for example. It talks about the social unrest, the chaos caused by Akhenaten's religious reforms. Tsarion argues this period was a key turning point, planting the seeds for what would eventually become, Judeo-Christianity.
Whoa. Okay, let me get this straight. He's saying this ancient Egyptian pharaoh, his attempt to reshape religion, it could have had ripple effects across centuries. That ultimately led to the development of, well, one of the biggest religions in the world. That's a lot to process.
It is. And it gets more complex when Tsarion digs into his analysis of the Bible.
This ought to be good. What does he say about it?
He doesn't hold back. Calls it a product of priest-perverted cosmology.
Priest-perverted cosmology. Okay, break that down. What does that even mean?
He's saying the Bible's message, its understanding of the cosmos, humanity's place in it, has been, well, manipulated, distorted by those in power.
You mean like twisted to fit their agenda?
Yeah. He thinks the original message, the true cosmology, it's been hidden to serve the interests of religious institutions.
Wow. So he's not just challenging religious interpretations. He's claiming there's a hidden history, a deeper truth that's been obscured.
Exactly. Now, whether you agree with him or not, Tsarion's work forces us to ask questions, tough questions about the stories we've been told and the sources of our beliefs.
No kidding. It makes you wonder what other truths are out there, hidden in plain sight.
A question worth asking. And as we get deeper into Tsarion, it gets even more interesting. He introduces this framework of 4 major cults:
Oh, here we go. I was wondering about those.
stellar, lunar, solar, and Saturnian. He believes they shaped ancient beliefs, and guess what? They still influence our world today.
So we're not just talking about different religious practices here.
No. He's saying these cults represent something fundamental about human nature, our relationship to the universe.
That's a pretty big idea. All right, lay it on me. What are these 4 cults all about?
Buckle up. And what's even more interesting is how Tsarion connects these cults to power dynamics.
Power dynamics.
Yeah, like the suppression of the feminine throughout history. He quotes Lawrence Vanderpost, who said, "The Western world, everything it stood for, it's been built on the suppression of the feminine principle."
Wow, that's a powerful statement. Like a whole way of knowing and being in the world, it's been pushed aside.
That's what he's arguing. And understanding these 4 cults, how they, interacted, how they competed for dominance throughout history, that's key to understanding the forces that shaped our world and our consciousness too.
So we're not just talking about ancient history. We're talking about patterns that are still playing out today in our beliefs, relationships, even our societies.
Exactly. And as we explore these 4 cults, you'll see how each one represents a different way of understanding the cosmos, ourselves, and our place in the grand scheme of things.
Okay, my mind is officially buzzing. Ancient cults, shaping our world today. Hidden history, the feminine principle, it's a lot. But before we get into those 4 cults, I want to circle back to that idea of light being deceptive. How can something that illuminates also deceive us?
It is a paradox, isn't it? But think about it this way. Light can be blinding.
Literally.
Literally and metaphorically. Tsarion's point is, we often mistake brightness for truth. But sometimes what seems obvious, it's actually hiding something deeper.
Okay, so like staring into the sun, you can't see anything else.
Exactly. You're blinded by the intensity. But what are we missing when we're blinded by that metaphorical light? Remember how Tsarion talked about the sun's light obscuring the stars?
I do, yeah.
To ancient cultures, those stars, they weren't just pretty lights. They represented a connection to the divine, a source of wisdom, of guidance. But when the sun comes up, all of that's hidden.
It's like we're trading a cosmic perspective for a limited earthly one.
Precisely. And Tsarion believes this same dynamic is happening inside our minds. He calls it the inner sun, the inner sun of ego consciousness. That part of us that's always analyzing, judging, trying to control everything.
Oh, I know that voice. It's loud in my head.
Right. It's always telling us what to do, what to think, how things should be.
Yep.
And while the ego has its purpose, Tsarion argues that when it's in control, it blinds us to a much bigger reality.
Okay, so we get fixated on our own little world, our own thoughts, our own desires. We miss the big picture.
Exactly. It's like we're walking around with blinders on, only seeing what's right in front of us.
But how does this tie into manipulation? If our egos are blinding us, how are others using that?
Tsarion believes that people who want to control, to manipulate, they use our ego against us. They feed our desires, give us simple answers, distract us with shiny things.
Keep us focused on the surface.
Exactly. Keep us from asking the hard questions.
So instead of encouraging us to think critically, explore different ideas, we just get fed easy answers, pre-packaged truths.
Exactly. And Tsarion sees this happening everywhere. Religion, politics, media, even our education systems.
So many messages all the time. It's overwhelming. Are you saying it's all designed to control us?
Well, it's designed to shape our perceptions, limit our understanding. It's like they're using light to create a smokescreen, hiding the truth behind a bunch of dazzling but empty promises.
Wow. That's a bit unsettling. It makes you wonder, how do we break free? How do we see through it all?
Tsarion's answer might surprise you. He says the key is the reemergence of the feminine principle.
Hold on, we're back to that again. The suppression of the feminine. How does that help us break free from manipulation?
Well, Tsarion sees the feminine principle as embodying qualities that, they've been pushed aside. Intuition, compassion, creativity, a deep connection to nature. These are all qualities that have been devalued in a world dominated by masculine energy.
He's not just talking about like women's rights here, right? It's bigger than that.
It's about a shift in consciousness, a rebalancing of energies that have been out of whack for a long time, centuries even. He believes that until we reintegrate these feminine qualities into our individual and collective consciousness, we're going to be vulnerable to manipulation, to control.
It's like we've lost a crucial part of ourselves, a way of knowing and being in the world.
Exactly. And, Tsarion doesn't hold back. He has some pretty strong statements about the role of women in reclaiming this feminine power.
Oh.
He says, and I quote, "The women who once ruled on Earth now seem content to be ruled by its destroyers."
That's a strong statement, like a call to action for women to step into their power.
It definitely is. And he goes on to suggest that women need to reclaim their roles as healers of nature and keepers of the true gnosis.
Keepers of the true gnosis, what's that?
It's this ancient knowledge
Yeah.
about the nature of reality and our place in the cosmos.
So women hold the key to unlocking a deeper understanding of, well, everything.
That's what he's suggesting. And it brings us back to those 4 ancient cults.
Right. We're circling back around.
He sees each cult representing a different aspect of human consciousness, different ways of relating to the cosmos, to each other, and understanding them, how they've interacted throughout history. It's crucial to understanding our world today.
Okay, I'm ready. Break it down for me. These 4 cults, what are they all about, and how are they still at play today? Okay, let's do it. Stellar, lunar, solar, and Saturnian. Those 4 ancient cults. I'm ready to connect the dots.
All right. Imagine these cults not as ancient history, but like blueprints for how we think, how we organize ourselves. Tsarion's argument is they're still active, shaping our world in ways we don't even realize.
So they're operating in the background, influencing our beliefs, behaviors, even like the structures of our society.
Exactly. But what sets each one apart? Let's start with the stellar cult. We've touched on it. It's all about the feminine. The cosmos, too. Think keepers of ancient wisdom, deeply connected to nature, the cycles of life and death. They saw the universe as, well, a living organism, and humanity, part of that web, all interconnected.
A more holistic view of reality than we tend to have today.
For sure. And Tsarion argues that the suppression of the stellar cult and the rise of the solar cult, it marked a major shift in human consciousness.
Okay, back up for a sec. Remind me, what's the solar cult all about?
Think masculine energy, the sun, hierarchy and control. It's all about imposing order, establishing those clear boundaries, and often putting a single, all-powerful god at the top, like a pyramid. Tsarion sees the cult of Aten with its sun god and monotheism as, well, fitting right into that solar cult framework.
And he thinks this shift towards a more patriarchal, authoritarian model, it's still happening today.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He sees the solar cult's fingerprints everywhere. Our emphasis on logic and reason, hierarchical power structures, even our tendency to, dominate nature, exploit it. Think of organized religion, for example. Focus on a single god, usually male. Obedience and submission to authority. Tsarion says that's pure solar cult.
Wow. It's like we're living under the shadow of this ancient cult, even if we're not aware of it.
Right. Now, the lunar cult is a little different. Tsarion connects it to intuition, emotions, the unseen realms.
Okay, so if the stellar cult is the cosmos and the solar cult is the sun, the lunar cult is the moon.
You got it. And remember, Tsarion talked about mind thinking versus brain thinking. The lunar cult, that's tapping into those intuitive, imaginative parts of ourselves.
The parts that often get, pushed aside in a world that's all about logic.
Yeah. Think astrology, tarot, dream interpretation. Tsarion sees those as tools to access that lunar cult wisdom, connects with those deeper layers of our consciousness.
It's like a counterbalance to that, overly rational, left-brained way of thinking that's so dominant.
Exactly. Okay, now the Saturnian cult. This one's a little more complex, maybe even a little spooky for some. It's about time, structure, those darker sides of human nature, like fear, control, that tendency towards rigidity, dogma.
Getting some dark side of the force vibes here, but you said it's not inherently evil.
Right. Like anything, it has its positive and negative sides. Saturn represents boundaries, limitations, and those boundaries. They're essential. They give us structure, a framework for society, help us make sense of the world.
So it's like the scaffolding. That holds everything up.
Yeah.
But it can become a cage if we're not careful.
That's a great analogy. Tsarion sees the Saturnian cult's influence in, like, our legal systems, governments, even scientific institutions. They provide order, stability, but they can also become oppressive, stifle creativity if they get too rigid.
Big question then. Are we shaping those systems or are they shaping us?
Exactly. That's what Tsarion wants us to ask. And it brings us back, full circle, to the stellar cult. With its emphasis on the feminine principle, He believes that's the key, to break free from the limitations
Yeah.
of the other cults
Yeah.
and create a more balanced, harmonious world.
So not about getting rid of the solar, lunar, or Saturnian influences, more about like integrating them in a healthy way.
Yeah. He sees the stellar cult as this path of conscious evolution, a way of being that honors both masculine and feminine, that recognizes our connection to all life and embraces the wisdom of, well, both the seen and unseen realms.
Powerful vision.
Ah.
But it feels challenging. How do we even start to shift that balance back towards the stellar cult's values in a world that seems so dominated by the other cults?
Tsarion doesn't give us easy answers, but he does say it starts with each of us, individually. We need to cultivate those stellar cult qualities within ourselves. Intuition, compassion, creativity, a connection to nature, that willingness to question authority, to explore new perspectives. And we need to support others who are, trying to create a more just, sustainable, interconnected world.
Like become living examples of those stellar cult principles, shining that light out into the world.
Exactly. It brings us to the last piece of Tsarion's work we wanted to touch on. His claims about secret societies.
Yeah.
And their influence on, well, global events.
Right. This is where it gets a bit conspiratorial, but important to discuss, I think. Ties into everything else we've been talking about.
Definitely. Tsarion believes these secret societies are essentially carrying the torch for the cult of Aten.
Okay.
Using their power and influence to, manipulate global events, steer humanity towards a new world order, based on, guess what? Those solar cult principles.
So they're using the tactics we talked about, deception, manipulation, but on a massive scale.
That's what he's suggesting. He thinks they've infiltrated governments, financial institutions, media, you name it. Any system of power they can use to shape and control.
That's a pretty serious accusation. Sounds like a spy movie plot. But how do we know if he's right? Isn't it all speculation?
There's a lot of debate about this. And it's crucial to approach these claims, well, critically. Tsarion's presenting his interpretation of history, his understanding of what's going on. But it's up to each of us to evaluate his ideas, draw our own conclusions.
Even if we're not fully on board with, like, shadowy groups pulling the strings, Tsarion does make you think about who's really in control.
No doubt. It's a reminder to be careful about the information we take in, question the narratives we're given, and, well, be aware of those potential hidden agendas.
Good advice for any deep dive, right? Stay curious, ask those questions, and never stop exploring.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Tsarion's work is a powerful invitation to do just that, to look beyond the surface, challenge those conventional ideas, and explore the deeper mysteries of human consciousness and the cosmos.
Well, this has been a wild ride. We've covered a lot. The hidden history of religion, light's deceptive power, the reemergence of the feminine, and those 4 ancient cults. I need a minute to process all this.
And that's the beauty of a deep dive like this. It's not about getting all the answers. It's about sparking that curiosity, that passion for exploration.
So to everyone listening, keep your minds open, keep asking those questions, and keep diving deep. Who knows what you might discover?